We released a survey report in September in partnership with the University of California, San Diego's China Data Lab, titled 3 Decades of Chinese Students in America. And in the chat box, you should be able to see soon a link to the survey summary on our website and to the full report on the UCSD website. Our goal was to create a broad, long-term framework through which to better understand the story of Chinese students in America and to add personal perspectives to the statistics. Tonight, we welcome 4 Americans who have themselves lived the experience of being international students from China to provide their perspective and tell their stories. This outstanding panel represents the diverse people who have come to America from China since the early 1980s, and also the significant contributions they have made to this country over the years. You have their bios in the program and in a link that will be on the screen. So I'll just mention a few highlights. The first member of the group to come to America is panelist Yawei Liu, who arrived in 1987 and earned his MA and PhD in history here. He is now a distinguished public figure based at the Carter Center in Atlanta. Over the years, Yawei has launched several publications and done much to advance U.S. China relations through his work at the Carter Center. Next, we will hear from Dawn Lee, who came to the United States in 1990 and earned her MS and PhD degrees in information technology and literary studies, respectively. Based in the DC area, Dawn remains active in both fields. She runs her own IT company, and she teaches Chinese Taoist culture and arts. Our third panelist, Min Fan, began her undergraduate studies in China, but completed her BA degree in art and her MBA here in the US. She then went to work for a multinational technology firm, and she now leads a small nonprofit based in the Midwest that focuses on promoting relations between the US heartland and China. Finally, we will hear from Yi Zheng, who came to the US in 2009, where he earned both an MS and a PhD in mechanical engineering. Yi is now a tenured professor at Northeastern University, the founder and president of a clean energy company, and active in Chinese American organizations in Boston. I've asked each of them to tell us a little bit about themselves, and then we will talk together about their experiences and their thoughts on the situation of Chinese students in America now. As always, we close with audience questions, so feel free to submit questions at any time through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can. Let's move directly to our speakers. Dr. Yawei Liu will begin with you. Please tell us a little bit about why and how you came to study in the US and eventually to stay.
Thanks, Madeline. Back in the 1940s, a group of American Army officers, as well as state diplomats that were attached to the group, so it's known as the Army Observer Group. Mao had frequent conversations with them. During one of the conversations with a member whose name is John Service, Mao said, every American yin and yang is a walking example of the open and democratic society of the United States. To use that quote, I think each of us, Dang, Ming, and Zi, each of us is a walking example of how beneficial U.S. China educational exchange is. And each of us is also a walking example of how great U.S. is, to us foreigners who were born outside U.S., came here and eventually settle down. So very quickly, my background, I was born in 1960, and the year I entered elementary school, the Cultural Revolution began. So in a certain sense, I lived through, the agony and the suffering of China in its first 30 years. And then I was able to go to college in 1978. So that was the beginning of the opening up and reform. When I was a freshman in college, one day, we got up and then we heard from the loudspeaker that U.S. and China were going to normalize relationship. And we were all flabbergasted because we were all trained and educated and indoctrinated, to bury the United States because U.S. was an evil country. So we're shocked because we couldn't believe that China was going to establish formal diplomatic relationship with a country that was considered evil, a country that we want to overthrow. So that's 1978. And after I graduated in 1982, I was assigned. Back then, you really don't need to apply for any job. Your job was given to you by the government. So my job was working as an editor in the provincial press. And I like to tell people that my job back then was actually to steal American copyright, because all I did over those 5 years is to find as many good books or novels, as possible, and identify people who can translate them into Chinese, and then hopefully the books will sell well. We never, the copyright of the book was never part of the consideration, and now you look back, you look at where China is in terms of copyright. That shows how much progress China has made. Right now, even when we said we're going to publish President Carter's book in Chinese, you have to go through layers of agency to find out who exactly owns the copyright and how much we have to pay. So I worked at the provincial press for about 5 years, and I realized I was not moving upward, and several of the opportunities to study overseas was given to others, and so I was a little mad, but I was hesitant to apply to any of the American universities because when I was in the process of getting into college, I failed a physical. I had a wounded eye. So I wasn't really allowed to go to college until my mom knocked at every possible door that he could get people to talk to her. So I entered college a month after the exam. The admission was over. And I thought, physical exam is going to be the same in the US as it is in China, until I realized, American colleges actually do not require a physical. So I ended up, being admitted by University of Hawaii. And of course, I had no money to pay for the tuition. So I was able to get a graduate assistantship. I came here in August 1987 with about $250. And of course, I had to borrow money initially until the first paycheck arrived, to return all the money. And then in 1989, I was admitted by Emory University. So University of Hawaii was a state university, so the money really was taxpayers' money. At Emory, I was able to get a Coca-Cola fellowship. It's a private university. So I benefited literally from one, the generosity of the American government, that will give fellowship and assistantship to foreign students. And then I benefited from the private philanthropy, because this money really came from Robert Woodruff, who used to run the Coca-Cola company. So I graduated in 1996 and was teaching in Georgia Perimeter College until one day one of the professors at Emory University called me and said, Yahweh, I would like you to help me out. I said, what kind of help do you need? He said, we're going to work on Chinese elections. second time I was flabbergasted, just like how shocked I was back in 1978 when I heard the normalization news. I said, there were no elections in China. You must be kidding me. And he said, no, there were elections in China. They were at the village level. So I started looking into it. And so that turned a new page in my life. That is, I started volunteering for the Carter Center to provide whatever support they needed to start observing village elections in China. And then I joined the center to run this project on September 1st, 1998. And the rest is history. So that's a brief summary of how I ended up here in the U.S. And I think it was back in 2005 I was naturalized. So now I'm a citizen of the United States. I was born in China. So in a sense, I have divided identity. I think many friends in China see you're no longer a Chinese, but here many people question my identity as American. They say you're still Chinese. So I think Don and Ian, Ming probably all have this kind of identity crisis. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Don, who is going to share her experience with us. Don.
Thank you, Yahweh. Yeah, for my story, it's not as long and interesting as yours. Mine is more straightforward. I was born and raised in Hunan, China, and earned my bachelor's in English, focusing on linguistics from Wuhan University, and then continued my studies at Peking University and became a member of the English faculty there. While I was teaching English at Peking University or Beijing University, my students went to America and we had some interesting exchange programs. And I thought, maybe I go and pursue my doctorate there. And so the two reasons that helped me decide to come to US were to pursue a doctorate and also to experience America. And, at that time in late 80s and early 90s, doctoral programs in China were very, very rare, very few, and even at Peking University. And so China was opening its doors, and we learned that America has the best education system and the strongest economy, all the good things that we learned during those years. And so I came here and in my mid-20s, and that was 30 years ago. And I enrolled in a doctoral program at George Washington University to study American literature, more from the interdisciplinary angle. And while studying at GW, I worked at Gilman Library, which is the main library on campus. And I was just so amazed at how open and how connected the whole university library system was. So there were 5 floors. I went to all the 5 floors, touched all the books and loved the books. When I was in Beijing, I couldn't even get to the stacks. And later on, I also learned about indexes, catalogs, and all those systems at the library, and taught students, undergraduate students, how to research. And so that piqued my interest in information systems. And at the time also, the internet came along. And so I took some courses along the way about information technology. And then lo and behold, after 6 some years, I got both degrees, 2 degrees, 1 degree in the language, in the literature, and the other in information systems. So after graduation, I did practical training, like most of us, I guess, and to just get to know more about American business life, cultural life, and eventually found a full-time job, very easy actually at that time with the master's degree in IT, a web management position in a DC company, in a technology company. And at the same time, I was also teaching different subjects. I love teaching, so I continue with that. I taught at in China before. So so after a couple of years, inspired by the rapid advancement in the information age, in those days, technology just came to the forefront of all our lives, and so I decided to enhance my technical skills, learn programming, learn even more, but wanted to turn that into something more practical and more useful, and not just doing a 9-to-5 job. So I co-founded a company that's data and analytics solutions. That's a company I still run right now, and I've worked there for 2 decades. So for this 20 years, I've devoted my professional life to providing data and analytics services to mostly U.S. federal government. We've served over 10 agencies, and we help government agencies make informed decisions with, nowadays you call data science. And so looking back, I realized if I had not studied in the US, I would still be probably a college teacher in China, college professor in China, and not really engaged at the forefront of technology. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'll pick up from there. So as the moderator mentioned, my name is Min Fan. I'm currently the executive director of a small but mighty nonprofit called U.S China Association. Studying abroad or studying in U.S. was really not part of my plan. When I was accepted by Peking University, I went there after Don already left. I came from a family with very modest means and very modest aspirations. The fact that I was accepted by Peking University was already, the dream coming true for me and my family. But when I entered Peking University, at the time, the 1-year compulsory military training was still required. A lot of daily drills, curfews. We were like soldiers for a year. So after that year, we came back to the campus, all wearing our Army issue jackets. I really felt like I want to kind of break out the box, kind of see what is out there for life. I had the time, as we mentioned, back then you were either assigned a major or you have limited options, but you were kind of given one. Don, you will laugh at this because my parents had picked information systems for me. And that was a major I was given, 信息管理系. But I really had a hard time. And I found the subject to be very dry for me. And I just really struggled to slug through it, even though I was a top student, graduate of my class. I found myself really spending a lot more time in extracurricular activities. I was in the 北大剧社, the Peking University Drama Club. I went to auditions at CCTV, and I went to art exhibits, and I was very busy dating. So after the 2 years at Peking University, I actually tried to switch my major. I tried even to transfer to another university to study something different. Both efforts failed. That's when I realized maybe I should look into studying abroad to give myself more options. I still remember I had to convince my parents to pay quite a bit of money back to the university for the investment the country had made in me, so that they will do the paperwork and release me so I can go study abroad. My parents weren't too happy about it, but they know enough of me. I was a tomboy growing up. Even though I was a model student, I was very stubborn. So I had my heart set. I'm going to study abroad. So they let me go. I really wasn't so methodically thinking about careers, job prospects. I wasn't even looking for Ivy League degrees. I just, I was young and idealistic. I just wanted to explore more options and give myself the freedom to follow my interest. I had relatives in North Carolina. They suggested that, hey, apply to the University of North Carolina and we'll sponsor you. And there I went. So that led me to actually totally switch my career, now study. I ended up studying art, received scholarship, had my exhibitions, had my artwork collected by professors, collectors. And then I acted in plays, and I really explored quite a range of different fields. And again, to my parents' dismay. But after a period of time, I graduated with an art degree and attempted to make a career being an artist, and found it to be really, really difficult. I was accepted by Rhode Island School of Design, but my family couldn't afford it. So I became more practical. I listened to a friend suggestion who was going to Duke Fuqua at the time, say, hey, get an MBA, and then you can get a really good job soon. And I got an MBA from Keenan Flagler Business School at UNC Chapel Hill, and certainly very quickly got a good job from the corporate America. I ended up to have about a dozen years, a stable, successful career in the corporate world. Fortunately, as one of the only MBA with art degree, I eventually was picked to run an ideation innovation program at a global multinational IT company. And that was really fun. And I was on that career track until there was a big decision to split the company. And we were told to, for a non-essential project, on hold, right? Until are you going to part A or part B of the company? And I thought, instead of sitting on my hands and collecting my paycheck, I should try something different. So I decided to take a 1-year sabbatical, started volunteering and doing something different. And that actually opened my eyes to a very different field, which is the nonprofit world. It happened to be the time when U.S China relation was going through a lot of turbulence. And as a Chinese American with a mixed race family, I really felt like I want to do something that can really help. I have no international relation background. What I have is from the innovation program training, the passion I have. So I was very fortunate to have been introduced to the former governor, Mr. Bob Holden, who is the chairman of the U.S. Heartland China Association, which Yahweh also sits on the board. And we were able to move very nimbly at a very difficult time during the pandemic to launch some really good programs. So I feel very fortunate after, trying different industry fields, crossing a lot of boundary to kind of find a sweet spot for me where my interest and my passion aligns with the need I see. So again, coming to America really, I think, helped me learn more about me and find myself to be a more all-rounded person I am. Again, among my high school and college peers, many of them are also in the United States. And when I was in the corporate world, there was a constant pool of, going back or not. After China opened up, some of my friends went back, some went back and then came back, some still shuttling back and forth. Everyone, made their private assessment of where the best opportunities are for them and their family. They're all, like you see right here, leaders in finance, law, technology, healthcare, education, you name it. So I think the contribution is very significant. I can't imagine. Actually, I'm thinking about when I had to pay Peking University to be released from the system so I can go abroad. I feel like the United States actually could write a check to China for all the really solid foundational training we had in China, so we can come here and thrive and excel in the graduate program. So again, I feel that as Yahweh and Dao mentioned, coming to the United States not only fulfill a personal dream we have, but also I think in a way really open them. So with that, I'll hand down the microphone to our next panelist.
Okay, thanks, Ming. So hello, everyone. This is Yi Zheng here. Currently, I'm an associate professor at the Northeastern University in Boston area. And I obtained all my degrees in engineering, mechanical engineering. And also, I never left university or college. And so I didn't do any interns. I didn't do any part-time job, actually, or any full-time job in industry at all. So in the past few years, actually I see, the population of Chinese students in America, this rise up, drop and goes down, rise up, goes down, oscillates. And since 2020, actually, the COVID started, so the Chinese student number population dropped sharply. So a little bit actually about my personal background. So I was born in Beijing, China, and I went to Tsinghua University for my bachelor study. I obtained my bachelor degree in 2009 in mechanical engineering, and then I came to the United States for my graduate study. I obtained both my Master of Science, Master of Philosophy, and a PhD degree, degrees from Columbia University in New York. So I have this long-term interest actually in engineering study and research interest actually since I was a freshman. So when I entered Tsinghua University in 2009, actually I for the first time actually I was impressed by the high talented actually students over there. And I'm not sure if actually the Tsinghua University was founded actually in 1911. And it was funded with a scholarship program initiated by American President Theodore Roosevelt. Without the United States, without the U.S. government, without this scholarship program between U.S. and China back in 1910, there was no Tsinghua University. And in the first few years, between 1911 and 1914, the first few years, all graduates from Tsinghua University came to the United States. The Harvard, actually Yale, Columbia, actually everywhere. They came here to study the new technologies, particularly science and engineering. And also, most people, I believe, have heard. So in my college, in China, in Tsinghua University, we were trained to become a red and professional engineer. In the 4 year actually in China, in Tsinghua, so we has been well prepared, well trained to become red engineer, professional engineer. Professional actually totally understandable, because actually we would like to be profession. To reach certain profession actually in our research field, in engineering, for example, actually mechanical engineering or electrical engineering. Red means actually, we were trained or prepared actually to be faithful, to the party. So that is one side, actually, that's what we experienced actually when we were, college students, particularly in Tsinghua University. While on the contrast, I also saw something strange because Tsinghua University actually exported, most, the Chinese American, the Chinese students in America. So based on my experience, when I graduated in 2009, more than 30% of my peers, my friends, the same class actually choose to study further, in the United States, in America. So this is something actually I would like to spread to people. So there exists a reason, for people, particularly, the Chinese students, to choose to study, to work, to live in the United States. Thank you so much.
So thank you all for sharing your stories and your memories. And let me start our conversation with a question about the Chinese students who are here today. As E alluded to the fact that the numbers have risen and now they are falling. Before the pandemic, there were 372,000 Chinese students here at the height. There are about 290,000 here the last few years. And there are many reports that there is a lot of alienation and a drop in interest among high school students in China and college students in coming to the United States for a variety of reasons. They see the United States as less welcoming. They see gun violence. They see they have more questions and they have more choices. They can stay in China. They can also, a lot of other countries are wooing them, England, Australia, Canada. So I guess and an interesting fact about Tsinghua, where you studied, was that at one time, 70% of the college graduates went to America for graduate school.
I said almost 30% actually at my time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and now that number is a great deal lower. I don't remember exactly what it is. So I'm wondering if how all of you would advise current students and scholars in China who are thinking about coming to the US. Would you encourage them to come? And do you think the United States is going to continue to remain an attractive destination? Anybody open to anyone who wants to tackle?
Yeah, if I may, I think certainly I will encourage parents if they want to send their children to study overseas, to look at the U.S. As maybe as the first choice. There are problems as Madeline you mentioned, and China's reporting about what's going on in the U.S. certainly has some negative impact on the parents and also on the potential students themselves. I just want to remind them, saying, U.S. is still one of the best place for kids to go to college, and U.S. Probably, I think, even more important for Chinese students after they graduate from college, either to further their study at the professional schools or to seek practical training here. Probably U.S. is more open on that front than European European countries or New Zealand or Australian universities. So I would continue to encourage them to look at U.S. as an option, and of course, be aware that there are political radicalization here in the U.S. in terms of U.S. China relationship. There's also gun violence. There's also anti-Asian hate. But despite of all these problems, I think the majority of the American people, and particularly the university and college, the faculty and staff, they're still very friendly. They're still very hospitable, and they still offer a very good environment for China students from China to have a good study here.
I would like to add that also another reason to encourage them to study here. It's people like me and Ming and Yahweh and Yi. We have grown up. We've grown up in America in a way. This 20 and 30 years we'll be in the US. We are a force. I've seen so many friends who have become leaders in their fields, and they mentor younger people. So I think as students, you probably are not very easy to get in touch with us, but there are different associations, activities, and we've also have been planning, doing different things to reach out more to younger generation. And so I think that there's this force that you can almost not depend on, but to not rely on, but actually just to get some help from. As new students in your early 20s, you do have a lot of difficulties, not just the language, but also the culture, how to make friends, how to really excel at school. There are just many different temptations also that distract you from your main goal here. But we are here. There is a large number of people like us in different fields. And I personally have helped a lot of students with internships and also helped mentor younger professionals.
In my opinion, since I've been working with a lot of students as interns, since we have student programs, I actually, I would say the answer might be a little more nuanced. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. The number has dropped because we have come across a lot of students who are here because their parents want them to be here. I think you will hear from Yahweh, me, Yi, and Dong. We all had personal journeys. We were driven. We want to come here. But I have come across students, their parents, because they didn't score well in Gaokao, or they know they can't get in top school, So instead of going to, lower tier in China, they will pay a consultant, do whatever they need, and get a student to go overseas, and looks really good on their family. Their kids is overseas. So I think there are a number of students who are maybe better off to be somewhere else, or the school that take them need to understand that handicap they have upon arrival. Another thing, as a parent with kids going through education system right now, I notice as some of my kids' friends, they are thinking about going to school in Europe. They will say, okay, the tuition is too high, and then my school too much into sport. I would go to school in Finland or in Germany, and let the Chinese go pay the high tuitions. So I'm hearing this discussion about, as a global marketplace, United States is actually benefiting a lot from this, brand we have for the Chinese student. Well, it may not be the best value for the buck for some of the Chinese families. So we actually recently, as Yavi know, we were working with some community colleges to let them do more outreach with Chinese parents, let them know that there's a more affordable path, because I hate to say another Chinese family sell the house so their kids can go overseas and the kid may not be truly motivated. So I do think that having the option globally for the kids is really important. One last thing I'll mention is I was talking to a friend of mine who is actually, her daughter just accepted Beida. So we're like, oh yeah, congratulations. But she was very concerned because she said her daughter does not want to go study abroad. She said there's a younger generation feel that China is already on the cutting edge and what they are to learn. The world's coming here. So she really wanted her daughter to go overseas. And well, since that there's a younger generation that don't have that kind of drive, that kind of hunger as the early generation we have. So those are some of my reflection on that. And I'll sit back and listen to other thoughts.
Yes, and also I like to add some of my comments here. And so one Ming actually mentioned that so talk to your friends. Some young generation in China saw that China already at the cutting edge. Actually, I had the same feeling. So I do talk to quite a few Chinese friends and Chinese students, particularly young generation these days. And most of them feel China currently is number one already, in almost all aspects. And also China is leading almost in all research fields. This is what they feel. Particularly like quantum computing, data mining, and the machine learning and the materials, particularly the renewable energy technologies. And what I would like to share some of my thoughts here, as I spent past decades, at least more than 10 years, in the nanoscale research. So I would say, so currently, U.S. is still actually leading some of the top research fields, particularly like the data management, data science, and nanoscale materials. Chinese universities and the Chinese institutions, research institutions, have published a few more papers, and sometimes they even publish more papers than the U.S. in specific field. But actually, we have to consider more on the quality of the scientific findings, and not simply on the numbers of publications. And also, I would like to say, so the research publication and the research finding is not simply working for one person or one country or it's one region. So actually, we need to share everything all together. So my opinion is I still would like to encourage more Chinese people, my Chinese students, particularly young generation, to come over to United States, to experience, to learn. And then if you choose to stay here, you can stay here. But if you dislike, your experience, everyone has totally different experience, different feelings, but your research, the culture, even food, you can choose to go back to your own country, but you experienced. So without coming to the United States, without even experiencing things yourself, you may not have rights, to talk more, about the experience is good or bad.
So that's a really interesting variety of opinions on the subject. And I want to follow up on something about the science and tech, but first I just want to ask a more general question, which is on many campuses today, and I know some of you spend time on American campuses, even if you're not teaching there regularly. Reports are that Chinese students really stick together and they don't get very involved in campus activities. And so I wonder, did you find this a problem when you were here as a student, or was it easier to make friends in the time when you were here? And what would you advise Chinese students today to those that come to make the most of their time on campus?
So I could share actually some of my thoughts. So that phenomena, it is true. So based on my understanding, so actually I went to graduate school actually at Columbia University. After graduation, I became a tenure track professor actually in University of Rhode Island, not far away from the Risty. And also then actually I spent 5 years, a couple of years as professor at Northeastern University. So I went to a few universities. So I did find out actually most Chinese students they prefer to stay as a group for research, for doing homework. For trips, for fun, for meals, for hiking. They prefer to stay all together. So I want to say when I was a student before, actually I did a similar way. So I like to hang out with my Chinese friends. It might make things easier. So we do not have any the language barrier, and we do share some common things in culture. But I tried my best actually to stand out of this comfort zone. I want to say that. So when I was a student in Columbia University, so I was elected as vice president of a Columbia University student club. It's named the Columbia University Renewable Energy Society. And then I was elected as a president of that club. So we run several activities in the field of renewable energy. We invited professors, and we organize some on-campus job fairs, and also we organize some field trip to New Jersey. And I want to say I was the only Chinese student in that society since it was founded maybe more than 20 or 30 years ago. And all the the club members either American students or mostly Indian students at the Columbia University. So actually I had a totally strange feeling. So when I was in that student club, I tried my best to share some of my thoughts from China. I learned from China, but not many people or other internet students took serious on my opinion. Maybe I was the only Chinese student there. And sometimes in their mind, actually, they thought the Chinese students should like to hang out with their friends, and they didn't like to share their opinions. So actually, at the very beginning, actually, my thought was not actually taken care actually mostly, but gradually, as I was engaged more actually in the student activity, organization activity, and then actually people realized, the Chinese student actually can also play something importantly. Not something like a nerd. Only spend most of the time actually at libraries, or you like to hang out with Chinese friends, and also you like to have only Chinese meals, at a Chinese restaurant. Actually, you didn't even want to try something differently.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I taught English in China, so my English was okay when I came here. But I was very timid. I also had a certain tone that was different from American students. I said, we should do this, we should do that, this kind of authoritative tone. I think probably English in China right now is much changed. Nowadays, we just don't really have very oral, communicative kind of style. And so I forced myself when I was at school here, being very timid. So I forced myself every workshop or every class, I must ask a question, no matter how stupid that question would be. And that was very helpful for me. And people would come to me, hey, that was a very interesting question, and this and that. So I've learned throughout the years that Americans are different from Chinese culturally, that they actually build friendships based on more on activities. So if universities that have a lot of Chinese students or have some Chinese students, they could arrange activities that do not require the students speak too much English. I mean, not intellectual or very deep oral communication. Such they could go hiking in the woods, they could dance, they do a lot of sports. I know that already. But I think the language barrier can really hinder students from making friends on campus. So activities that require less oral communication would be really helpful.
I want to share a couple of observations. I think Ming mentioned Chinese students, don't ever think of going to community college. I want to echo that because I used to teach at a community college. I taught there for about 12 years. I think on my 12 years teaching, the Chinese students, I could number them using my fingers, because talking to some of the Chinese students, Emory University, whose nickname is Forever 21, it seems it's below, the university that they want to study. They are looking much higher at, Columbia, at Harvard, at Princeton, at Stanford. So I think that mentality, either mentality of the students themselves, but even more so, I think of the parents, they really need to look down and look for other opportunity. I mean, yes, you probably have a lot of money to support your children to go to good universities, but why don't you save the money and send them to, state universities, to community universities? Number two, I think I agree with Don that if you don't have the oral communication skill, it's really hard to interact with Americans. And so, I mean, also, it's just so much easier to interact with your own folks. I came here when I was already a grown up. So it's really difficult, sort of when you rent, you certainly want to run with the Chinese. You don't want to run with American because you have different living style and that's different. But whenever you can, you should try to make an effort to interact with Americans. And one of the fortunate connect I had is when I was at the University of Hawaii, fellow graduate students, we're all TAs, so we talk a lot. So the first summer, one of the fellow graduate students basically said, if you want to work to make money to get your wife to come here, my mom will find you a job. So I ended up in the first summer in a place called Brainerd in Minnesota. I worked for a hospital, and his mom became my American mom, and his dad became my American dad. So my American mom just passed away early this year. I went there 2 years ago when she was already in memory treatment center, but she still remembered me. The month, the whole summer I spent at her house, that she took such good care of me. I think any opportunity that you're able to interact with Americans is always going to be a blessing.
I also think some of the problem we're seeing is actually the industry, the education, the study abroad industry in the U.S. Again, a lot of students I've known, the family hired a consultant, right, to help them navigate the whole system to come here. So they had a hand holding the whole time. The parents would joke about they don't hear from the kids until the kid need money. So what happens, you have students who come here who are really pampered in a bubble. And I don't think it's any unusual, like students from Pakistan get together, students from China, India get together. We sit on the campus, but the sheer size of Chinese student makes that phenomenon so much bigger. And another thing that was really interesting, we had top interns. We had one from University of Michigan, one from Northwestern, one from University of Chicago one summer, and along with American students. And to do the icebreaker, we asked every student to share their favorite summer activity. So the American intern talk about, working at the pool, as lifeguard, going fishing with dad. Every Chinese student we had that summer, they were talking about 补课. They were 补课. They were getting additional tutoring. And so when your life experience is so narrow, and that you actually need to stretch, engage, but they don't come here knowing they have a deficit, and they look for the ranking. I was just in China. One of my friends said, "Oh, we just hired a top consultant because my daughter wants to go to Harvard. We got to get a really good consultant who has a good reputation." So I'm thinking, okay, if you have kids who are coming here in that, they will not be looking for life experiences to broaden their horizon, to be more of themselves. It's more for ranking and brand. So that's where I see a big gap. I think the educational exporting talent or study abroad industry has a role to play to make sure those students who are shipped here really get the best from this wonderful opportunity they have. Like, Dong, Lee, Yahweh, and I, we fully took advantage of opportunity, and we got a lot out of it. So it's kind of sometimes a pity to see how much was invested. And I saw all the different players, U.S. institutions, Chinese ones, parent students, and all the untapped potential in this space.
But are you saying that you think that the study abroad advisors in China need to do a better job, or the American education, study abroad international student office in American campuses have to do more?
I think there's a lot of reflections. Instead of pointing finger whose fault it is, the student are in a bubble, or I was thinking I'm going to borrow the quote from the president of Illinois Institute of Technology. I was on panel with him recently. He said the biggest challenge he sees as educator is waste of human potential. Think about Yahweh, me, and Dong Yi being left in China. The potential we would have reached would not be here. So I'm thinking about the system it is when you have a student who are really truly underutilized or under their talent is not. I have no student who want to stay in the United States, but they couldn't get a visa. So they go back to Canada, to China. So again, we need new talent. So there's a lot of wasted human potential. I feel that one or another, it's manifesting, whether student feel isolated and not fully getting the benefit of education.
Yeah. One thing, we've had some closed door discussions with student groups here in the U.S. after our student survey came out. And recently, I've heard several students say that volunteer work, getting involved in volunteer work while they're on campus, has been really helpful to them and eye-opening to them. And so, for instance, some campuses offer alternate spring break, where you go to third world and do a service project. And Chinese students who do volunteer work, or another one that I know went to a very poor community in the United States and worked there for a week, but they come back and say this was a transformative experience, and it really helped them engage with American students. So, that one might be one way that American campuses can encourage their international students to try to do more of that. So a related question, I guess, would be, we found in the survey, you hear the criticism that Chinese students in America are in a media bubble. They only follow Chinese social media, Chinese sources of information. So in other words, they basically absorb a Chinese worldview even when they're here. I guess I wondered, in our survey, it didn't really show that. It seemed much more complex, and there was a mix of media. When you were here in this country, there was less social media. So did you feel like you were in a bubble of Chinese media, and do you see students today doing that? Did you follow American news sources? Do you think Chinese students know anything about
personal experiences? No, I was not in the bubble. We receive the People's Daily all the time, but we don't bother to read People's Daily. there's no social media at the time, right? We have to write letters. It takes 10 days for a letter to get back home, and then another 10 days, if your family members are going to write to you. And occasionally we run, videotapes to watch the Chinese soap operas. But we know that if you read the Chinese media outlet, those reports are not necessarily accurate. And so there are Chinese language websites here that we consume, particularly with the further development of the internet. We're constantly digest, the alternative reporting of what's going on in China. This may be different from the younger Chinese students who came here, and particularly when WeChat and other social media outlet is so omnipresent in their life. So it could be a totally different story.
Social media is presenting all kinds of problems on campuses, I guess, but I think WeChat is still fairly ubiquitous among Chinese students, and clearly you can get news that way as well. But I hope that there is a way for American administrators to kind of encourage the consumption of American news as well as news from China, and to broaden their students' perspective. So I wanted to follow up with E on something that you were mentioning, that China is now so advanced in so many different technology areas that some students are questioning, whether they should be coming to study in the US or not. On the other side, there are reports now of a disturbing phenomenon in which scientists in America who are working for American companies and American universities, but originally came from China, are now actually choosing to leave their jobs or leave their campuses and return to China for work, because they see the technology and the fields that they're in are advancing so rapidly in China. Are you noticing any of that in your field?
Yes, actually, I can share some of my observations, actually. So something I observed in the past few years. So I spent a couple of years at University of Rhode Island, and then actually I moved to Northeastern in Boston. So I had two different universities as professors. Since 2014, I graduated from Columbia University. This almost 10 years ago. I observed a lot. I can also say a lot. Actually, I observed quite a few Chinese professors, tenured or tenure-track professors, or even Chinese American professors choose to go back to China, return to China, and take the professorship in a position actually in Chinese universities, or in a position in Hong Kong or Singapore or some other places. Some of my close friends actually they also chose to leave, and altogether the couple who used to be the tenure track professors in United States, and they did really well. They obtained a bunch of grants from federal agencies, United States, and companies, but they still actually chose to go back to China a couple of years ago, before pandemic started. So I want to say actually this phenomenon actually was not affected by phenomena or encouraged by phenomena. It might be encouraged by some other factors. So I talked to them. Actually, they explained something. They explained to me some family issues or family factors might actually play more important role. But sometimes they also feel actually the environment for research, for doing research in China, they feel that environment in China actually might be more open and opener, than the research experience in the United States. For this part, actually, I disagree. That's the reason I still should stay, and I choose to stay here. But they have totally opinion. So actually, I feel even actually we all born in China. We came from China, and we are professors in American universities. We have totally opinions. So that might be affected by. There's also actually this might refer to your previous question. They might actually affected by the media or news. In Chinese circle, in the bubble. So they only listen to the all good news from Chinese media, the platform, and they seldom actually heard something from US, this US news media. And then actually in their mind, actually, the Chinese news actually dominate most of their thinking, okay, their mind, in their brain. And then the Chinese has been developing really well. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, has been developing pretty well, but still, actually, America actually also has been developing, okay, in a really good trend. And then actually in their mind, actually, as they absorbed or they hear, they listen actually more, they absorb more information, okay, from the Chinese media, and then that might be one of the major reasons, okay, they choose to return to China.
Anybody else have any experience with this phenomenon or want to comment?
I'd like to add a few words. I think being here as Chinese Americans, we do have two issues. One is integration with the mainstream society. I think some of us have some difficulty with that. And then the other issue is, I mean, integration here means after you've been here 20 years, you still don't feel you 100% belong. Your kids are grown, they've already have their own life. And you want to think what you want to do next. You still have 50 years to live. Do I continue to stay in the US, or I probably go back to China and experience some of the things that I never got to experience? And so the other reason is the family, like the parents of my generation, for example, they are in the 80s. They need a lot of support, and just our hearts kind of strong, pulled by them. And so considering those two things, some of my older friends, they have decided most of them already citizens, American citizens, some green card holders, but they said, we'd like to, go back to China and see how things go. And I already could come back, or, they just have certain considerations that life would be more fully lived if they tried that route too.
That's a really interesting perspective. Not every decision to go back to China means some type of disloyalty to your citizenship in the US.
Right.
Yeah, I would mention, I do remember when the first case was Professor Wu Xifeng at MD Anderson, because I was in Houston at the time. I still remember when NIH sent a letter it was in the news, and it was she was being investigated, and then she decided to move back, right? Immediately she was made the public health school head at Georgetown University. So later that whole China initiative or NIH China initiative got questioned a lot, but again, a lot of people already left. I know bioscientists who decide not to take more of pioneer research just because that might be a little more sensitive, and had it. But again, there was research at one time, U.S. China collaboration would have accelerated tremendously, but that would not be, it would be questionable. So he didn't want to bring more trouble for his family, so he backed off from that. So definitely there are examples of those who make their own personal assessment, whether is it better for me to do my research in this country or that country, or for me just to step back from some of the research that could be sensitive or become sensitive next year or under different leadership. So those are real questions going through a lot of the people I know who are doing the cutting edge research.
It's a loss though to science to have people feel they have to step back. We're actually at the point where we should turn to some of our audience questions, and we do have quite a few. So let me start with a few of those. This question comes from John Thompson, who spent many years in China and is now retired from the U.S. State Department. He said, do you maintain close contact with your classmates and former colleagues in China?
We do maintain very close contact with our classmates, with friends in China. We have WeChat group. You mentioned WeChat. We talk over there. Before pandemic, whenever I return, I go back to my city, which is also Min's city, Xi'an, and meet with my high school and college classmates. And of my class, actually, I think at the college, CY, I think close to 40% of my class, they're overseas. Many of them are here in the U.S. and some of them are in Canada or Europe. And so again, our generation is just a close knit community. We maintain that contact, but of course, I think our views are quite diverse and different, and we don't agree with each other all that much, and that certainly has contributed to the alienation that we actually stop talking as much as we should have to.
Is it harder during this period of tension, I imagine, to keep those contacts strong as well? Another related and interesting question is, how close do you feel to your American university? Interestingly, in our survey, we found that former Chinese students were engaged in alumni associations with their American university at higher rates than the average American. And they also were making donations to their American school at very high rates, higher than the American average. So I guess I just wonder if you maintain close contacts with your university through alumni activities or through donations, and do you maintain close contacts with the people you knew there?
I think so. Again, I was just in Shanghai, and then the Kingdom Flagger Business School had a reunion. There are students who went before or after. There's a sense of we had a very unique shared experiences, right? In addition to going to the same school, you're going to a same school coming from China. So we have a lot of common language. That's something that I do think give us a very unique connection from my perspective.
Yeah, I actually never left the university. I graduated from Emory, work at the Carter Center. Carter Center is part of Emory University. So both of my daughters graduated from Emory. So Emory really looked like a second home, and we will certainly maintain the contact and keep donating, because it is this university that offered me the fullest education and opened up my horizon. And it's the same university that educated both of my kids, and now they are responsible citizens of this country. So that gratitude, I think, will be with us forever.
And I think you still teach there sometimes as well, don't you?
Yeah, I'm an adjunct professor at the political science department. So this relationship is really enduring, I guess.
Yes.
And this is really interesting, very interesting question, I think, how close Chinese students are to the universities. I was thinking, the more I think about this question, the more it seems, the university, because when we came, we didn't have family here. We didn't have many relatives at all. So the university almost became our family. And for me, GW, George Washington University, is the reason I'm still here. I wanted to go to California to get closer to China in my first few years. And then I decided I have many friends around GW. So at one point, I actually moved to live close to the campus because I just felt a little closer to them than other people. It's kind of very interesting. And then when I co-founded this company, when we have this company right now, we work with the career centers to hire the students for internships and even just for regular positions. So I have very close contact with them. I sometimes go to their events, and because they are still in the same city as I live, so pretty close.
And also, I still actually maintain a really close contact, with my friends. Actually, we both actually went to Columbia University for our graduate study, And also, I echo with Don, very much. As we came to the United States, and we don't have our parents, we don't have our family members here. Actually, not many friends, here. So we only have our classmates, from the same class, from the same university, the same department. And also, I spent 4 years in college in China, but I spent actually more than 4 years, 5 years for my PhD study at the Columbia University in the United States. So clearly, actually, I have, maybe longer friendship, here, and more friends here, than my friends in China. But I still should maintain a really close, contact, with my Chinese, friends, actually, over there.
Yeah.
And also yeah, please, actually, don't.
Okay. Also, some of my friends who went back to China after graduating from GW, when they came back to visit, they said, Dawn, take me to GW, drive me there. And they were so touched by the changes of the university, and they just felt like they came home, even though they lived in China. And
yes, I just wanted to.
I was touched by it, actually.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to give a really, really small story or example here. So when I had my wedding ceremony, actually I had a ceremony both in Boston as well as in China. So when I organized my wedding ceremony in China, I invited all my friends, from Chinese universities and also from Columbia University. Surprisingly, all my friends, from Columbia University, nowadays, they are working in China. They all flew from different cities. From Hong Kong, from southern part of China, flew to Beijing to attend my wedding ceremony. While some of my close friends, from Tsinghua University, from my college, even actually we stay in the same city, they chose actually not to come actually. But actually, I won't argue for. Actually, I won't actually. As I believe in everyone actually had their justified excuse. The excuse. But I wanted to say here is, so we do maintain a really close friendship. From American universities or colleges. Actually, we studied here.
So we've answered a lot of the audience questions in the conversation, so I won't be able to get to all of them. Two people asked a very similar question. Jin from the Atlanta International Education Group and Grace Feng of Nissan International were both wondering about the current rate of return of Chinese students. And I've heard recently, some people who claim that America has trained the best and brightest from China for the CCP, for the benefit of the Chinese Communist Party. And I just wanted to comment on that before I turn it over and say that over the years, really, of the largest number of Chinese students, particularly advanced graduate students who were the bulk of Chinese students for the first 20 years, remained in the United States. They did not return to China. Nowadays, the return rates are higher, but the number of undergraduates from China in the United States is much higher and has surpassed the number of graduate students from China for the past 10 years or so. And so undergraduates are returning to China at much higher rates because that's what undergraduates do. They're younger, their job prospects here are not as good. So not all of that is a sign that all of our training has gone out the window. However, I guess I just wondered whether you've seen Chinese students that tending to want to stay here in the United States or want to return nowadays, whether you have any perspective on that.
I'll share my perspective from working with Chinese interns. They always ask if they could get a job at our NGO. So our NGO being small, but NGOs have the benefit that you don't have to get a lottery when you do the H-1B. So we get asked all the time. However, because of budget reasons, I always turn them down, even though in the past we have sponsored some, but most of them want to stay, whether for experience, for the short term or long term want to stay. And then we actually even thought about writing letters for the states that really want to have more immigrant workers to maybe loosen their policy because they're very educated, motivated. So that's one part I will share is a lot of students we have come across really want to stay, but they were not able to get a status to allow them to stay. Second thing is some students we heard that went back, and they were telling us that because they've been educated abroad, they were not being considered for some jobs. Because right now, being educated abroad is not as strong a selling point as it used to be. And even for some government job, that's actually not preferred. So those are things that we're hearing that even for students who are going back, being educated overseas may not be a plus as they had thought would be.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors because the unemployment rate for younger people is very high in China right now as well. So that's probably a big motivation for a lot of students wanting to stay. Any other comments on that question?
I have a quick comment. I think from the perspective of the Chinese government, they do need to look at the fact that why so many Chinese students, both undergrad and graduate students, are here. They can certainly improve the educational environment in China so that this brain drain, I mean, in a sense, it is a brain drain for China because, they come here, we came here, and we did not return. But from the American perspective, for those who say that American universities have trained the brightest and the best for the Chinese Communist Party, I think they're just blinded by the fact that U.S. actually have gained so much more from Chinese students once they settle down from here. But not only that, I think they are also contributing to a better, productive, more stable relationship between these two countries. And lastly, I think they're making a contribution to a better world, to global peace and prosperity.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I like to point out, the college students in China, they're around 40 million. And those Chinese students in the US right now is 290,000. So you can't compare. If you say that, Chinese government is outsourcing higher education to the US, something similar to that, it just doesn't stand because the numbers are so different. And so my back to this internships and so on, whether students want to stay, I echo Min, and but it's quite competitive. I work in the data science field, is at the forefront, and students who really can remain and find jobs in companies like mine, they really have to be the top-notch students. It's quite competitive, and that is true. But I think that most students who are in this tech field want to stay for a few years if they could, but a lot of times they just cannot.
And also, actually, if I
go ahead.
Yeah. So I still would like to just add one quick point here, based on my observation in the past few years, particularly in the field of engineering, mechanical engineering, graduate students. Actually, I think I would like to differentiate graduate students into two different groups. I mean, the master degree students and the PhD, degree students. Clearly, actually, these two groups, students coming from these two groups, have quite different backgrounds. And considering the financial support, most PhD students are supported by U.S. governments, federal agencies, NSF, DOE, or DoD, funding agencies, while most master students actually are financially sponsored by their families, their friends, their parents. So actually, totally, actually, they have a different perspective. But based on my observation, actually, most of the graduate students, including both PhD and master students, after graduation, they chose to stay in this country. But most of them, had to go back to China, maybe because of the visa issue, because the United States only issue actually really limited this quota for green cards every year. Well, most of the PhD students might be more eligible for the higher level, green cards like EB1, EB1A, EB1B. So actually, they are able to stay in this country. So that's the difference between two different groups of graduate students. from China, United States.
I think that it's an important point that return rates and reasons vary greatly, whether you're looking at PhDs, master's, or bachelor's students. So that question is best looked at by level of degree. Let me move to a question here from Bob Kapp, former U.S. China Business Council president, now a special advisor to the U.S. China Education Trust, among other things. And he sends greetings to Yahweh and other friends. President Xi, he says, has stressed that anyone, anywhere of Chinese descent is and should consider themselves part of the Chinese family as embodied by the People's Republic. How does that assumption by the highest political leadership in China affect your own experience in the US and your experiences interacting with native-born Americans? Anybody?
That's a tough question to answer. I think if you look at recent Chinese history, overseas Chinese have certainly provided pivotal support to China's revolution, be it particularly, the Republican Revolution, the Revolution of 1911. They were largely funded by the overseas money, so to speak. When the revolution happened in Wuhan, Dr. Sun Yat-sen actually was in the U.S. trying to raise money, to sustain the revolution. So as a result, I think both the ROC and the PRC government have this tendency to believe, if you have Chinese blood, then you're Chinese, and therefore your loyalty to the government is going to be expected, and you will remain always in heart, if not in mind, as a patriotic Chinese. I think that may not necessarily be true today, and so I think also that kind of statement does hurt people who live in the U.S. or in other countries. I think the fact that in Southeast Asian countries, the loyalty of ethnic Chinese are always questioned, and that there is growing suspicion here in the U.S. of the loyalty of people like us. If you listen to Christopher Wray, when he talked about every ethnic Chinese living in the U.S., is a non-traditional collector of intelligence for the Chinese Communist Party. And so that kind of statement actually supported this misleading statement from some American politicians. So we do face that challenge, and but we are American citizens, and therefore our loyalty first and foremost is to the country that we have adopted, and so that's my. I probably have not answered Bob's question, but I just shared my mixed feeling and why the Chinese leaders like to say things like that.
Thank you.
I think it's a tough time for a lot of Chinese students here. It's already tough enough, as we mentioned, cultural changes and difference in language. But this is definitely another layer of complexity. As Yahweh mentioned, I've heard from our friend in university, because you have Chinese students they don't say I'm Chinese, I'm actually Taiwanese, or they say I'm Hong Kongese, right? But then, or I'm Thai from Thailand, but I'm from Chinese descent. So people are starting to really self-identify. So they are differentiated from each other. So for the student coming from mainland, I believe that's the bulk of the student we're talking about, 200,000 plus, and that's a new territory for them to understand this identity. And so I've noticed some Chinese students, they would definitely refrain from talking about sensitive topic because they don't want to speak wrong or hurt someone's feelings. And I've been approached by some universities say, what do we do when this Taiwan thing come up? So again, this is the area. It's difficult. As Yari said, it's got politicians, other people all weighing in to make it very difficult black and white situation for students.
Certainly is, and we've heard students through our survey and through our conversations saying that they feel caught between a rock and a hard place because they have pressure from other Chinese students on campus to show patriotic loyalty, and they have pressures from Americans who want them to be critical of the Chinese government, and they just feel like they have no room for any kind of political opinion at all. They just want to avoid politics.
Yeah, I'd like to share as a language student, my first life as a language student. I think that there's something that's lost in translation. China opened its doors in only just a few decades ago. And English and Chinese, the two languages are so different, and two cultures are very different. And the words like family, motherland, country, those things, Chinese say very broadly. In English, it's very specific, the People's Republic of China. And but you can just say motherland or country or state, or we're all family. And, Chinese culture has been that of a Taoist culture, which is harmonizing all forces between yin and yang and harmonizing the force. So I've noticed, because of my language training, I have this sensibility of looking at the languages and think what they really mean. And now Bob's, the question there, I have not seen the original. I don't know the full article or the context. So I just share my observation that sometimes it's the language actually, the actual meaning gets lost in the translation. I think I've seen a lot of those examples in other cases. In this one, I don't know the original, so I can't really comment this quote.
I'm going to have to end the discussion here because we are just about running out of time, and we have many other questions that we weren't able to get to, and I am sorry for that, but I feel like it's been a rich conversation, and I have just a very few quick closing thoughts. So some 3 million Chinese students have studied in America over the 40 years, beginning in the post-Mao era. And we can see they play key roles throughout Chinese society and American society. Like our panelists tonight, they're a bridge helping Americans and Chinese understand each other. And a not insignificant number of them are helping to manage U.S. China relations in governments and boardrooms on both sides of the ocean. In terms of numbers and duration and impact, Chinese and American student exchanges clearly form the bedrock of U.S. China relations. So we've talked about risks. There are always risks in large-scale exchanges like this of people from different societies, especially with tensions running so high between their governments. These risks need to be managed, and they are managed. There are laws and guidelines in place to do so reasonably. I think it can be done without casting aspersions and alienating large segments of the population. I think that should be a goal. I hope we get toward that. When USCET decided to do this survey of former Chinese students in America, we wanted to broaden the understanding of Chinese students here and encourage more people to tell their stories like you've done and to do more research on related topics. So I hope this conversation has provided food for thought. I'm sure the audience will join me in gratitude to this distinguished panel for sharing their experiences. And I also want to thank the audience for your participation and for your interest. Good night, everyone. Thanks so much.
Recording stopped.
It was fun. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Yahweh. Thanks so much. We got to keep the conversation going.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Yi
Bye,
and Dawn, thank you. Min.
Yep.
Looks like
Thank you,
she has
everyone.
trouble.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care. Let's
Yeah.
stay in touch. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.